They say the best revenge is success, but they've never watched their cheating wife's career implode in real time during a live investor presentation. I have. It's better than success. It's art. I should have known something was wrong when Jessica started caring about her appearance again. Not that she'd ever let herself go. My wife was the kind of woman who could make a hoodie look like business casual. But suddenly, she was spending 20 minutes on makeup for Casual Friday and buying lingerie that never seemed to make it into our bedroom rotation. The discovery came at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, because of course it did. These things never happen during reasonable hours when you're mentally prepared to have your life shattered. I was debugging a particularly stubborn piece of code for our AI's neural processing system when I grabbed Jessica's laptop from the coffee table. Mine was upstairs, hers was right there, and we'd always shared everything. Well, almost everything. Her messaging app was still open, minimized behind a browser window full of marketing analytics. I wasn't trying to spy, I was literally just looking for a clean terminal window. But Ryan's name in the conversation list caught my eye. My best friend since college, head of business development at our company, the guy who'd been my best man and Jessica's workout buddy, and apparently, based on the message preview I could see, much more than that. Can't wait for this weekend. David thinks I'm visiting my sister in Portland. He's so trusting, it's almost sad. My fingers hovered over the trackpad. I could close the laptop, pretend I never saw anything, go back to debugging code like the reliable, boring husband Jessica apparently thought I was. Or I could click. I clicked. Ryan. The Seaside Inn confirmed our reservation. Ocean view, king bed, champagne service. Jessica. Perfect. I told David I'm doing a marketing retreat with the Portland team. He didn't even ask for details. Ryan. God, he really doesn't pay attention, does he? Jessica. He's too busy with his precious code. Sometimes I think he loves those algorithms more than me. Ryan. His loss, though it makes things easier for us. I scrolled up. The messages went back 3 months. 3 months of weekend getaways, lunch meetings that ran long, late-night strategy sessions that happened to coincide with my business trips. Jessica and Ryan, my wife and my best friend, planning their secret life with the efficiency they brought to quarterly reports. Jessica, I feel bad sometimes. He works so hard, and he's actually brilliant. But God, Ryan, he's just so predictable, so safe. I need more than safe. Ryan, you deserve more than safe. You deserve someone who sees your potential. Jessica, the IPO will change everything. Once we go public, I'll have options. Real options. Ryan, we'll have options. This is just the beginning for us, Jess. I kept reading, my coffee growing cold, my code forgotten. Marriage counseling teaches you to communicate. Coding teaches you that the best solutions are elegant and devastating. Right now, I was learning which approach I preferred. Ryan. Did you see how the investors reacted to your presentation yesterday? Mitchell was practically drooling over your growth projections. Jessica. Those weren't just my projections. David's predictive algorithms made half of that presentation possible, but he's too modest to take credit. Ryan. His modesty, your ambition. Perfect combination. Jessica. For the company, maybe. But I can't build my future on someone else's work forever. I laughed out loud in the dark living room. Someone else's work. The neural processing system that was about to make us all millionaires. I'd designed 70% of it. The predictive algorithms that had investors salivating. I'd been developing them for 2 years. The clean, intuitive user interface that made our complex AI accessible to average users. Mine, and mine. But Jessica was VP of marketing, and Ryan was head of business development, and they were the ones who stood in conference rooms explaining my work to people in expensive suits. They were the faces of NexGen solutions while I was the engine, invisible and apparently unappreciated. Ryan. Speaking of David, we need to talk about post-IPO structure. Mitchell asked me about leadership transitions. Jessica. What kind of transitions? Ryan. The kind where technical founders sometimes get moved to advisory roles. Very lucrative advisory roles. Jessica. You mean pushing David out? Ryan. I mean, recognizing that NexGen needs business leadership for the next phase. David's brilliant, but he's not a CEO. He's not even really management material. Jessica, he'd hate that. He built this company. Ryan, he built the technology. We built the company. There's a difference. I set the laptop down very carefully, with the same precision I used when handling expensive equipment that might explode if jostled wrong. Because that's what I was now. Expensive equipment that had served its purpose and was about to be discarded for newer, shinier models. 15 years of friendship, and apparently, I was the only one not getting the memo that loyalty expired after college. 5 years of marriage, and she called me reliable, the same way people call oatmeal nutritious. Technically a compliment, practically an insult. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They assumed I was as predictable as they thought I was boring. They assumed that David Chen, the quiet coder, the background genius, the reliable husband, would just accept whatever they decided was best for him. They were about to learn why assumptions in programming lead to crashes. I closed Jessica's laptop and went back to my code. But instead of debugging the neural processor, I started working on something much more interesting. If they wanted to play corporate chess, they'd pick the wrong pawn to sacrifice. I didn't just know their game. I helped build the board. By sunrise, I had a plan. If they wanted to play corporate chess, they picked the wrong pawn to sacrifice. I didn't just know their game. I helped build the board. The thing about being a systems architect is that you learn to think in layers, surface level, infrastructure level, and the hidden processes that make everything work. People operate the same way, and Jessica and Ryan had just shown me their surface level. Now I needed to map their infrastructure. Step 1. Access. As the company's senior technical lead, I had administrative privileges on every system we used. Email servers, file storage, communication platforms, expense reporting, even building security. I'd set up most of these systems myself, which meant I knew not just how to use them, but how to use them invisibly. Jessica had already left for her morning spin class, a new habit that coincidentally started 3 months ago, so I had the house to myself. I made coffee, sat down at my home workstation, and got to work. First, I created a mirror of Jessica's email account, not hacking exactly, just using my administrative access to set up a backup protocol that copied all her messages to a secure server I maintained for disaster recovery purposes. Completely legal, fully within my authority as head of IT infrastructure, and utterly devastating for someone conducting an affair through company email. The emails told a story that made their text messages look like amateur hour. Jessica and Ryan weren't just sleeping together, they were systematically positioning themselves to take over the company. They'd been feeding specific information to certain investors, setting up meetings I wasn't invited to, and worst of all, presenting my technical innovations as collaborative efforts while minimizing my role. From Jessica.Martinez to Ryan.Matthews. Subject: Mitchell, meeting notes. Ryan, great meeting today. Mitchell loved the presentation on adaptive learning protocols. I positioned them as emerging from our collaborative development process rather than David's solo work. He's more comfortable investing in team innovations than individual genius projects. We need to be careful about David's ownership claims. His employee contract gives him significant IP rights, but if we can document collaborative development, we can argue for distributed ownership post-IPO. Schedule another meeting with Mitchell for next week. Let's bring Sarah from legal. My coffee mug cracked when I set it down too hard. They weren't just planning to push me out. They were planning to steal my life's work and make it legal. The adaptive learning protocols were my breakthrough, the innovation that had made our AI genuinely revolutionary instead of just another chatbot. I'd spent 18 months developing them, working nights and weekends, building something that could actually change how humans interact with artificial intelligence. But if they could prove collaborative development, they could claim shared ownership. And if they controlled the narrative with investors and board members, My individual contributions would become footnotes in the Jessica Martinez and Ryan Matthews success story. I kept digging. Company expense reports showed Ryan billing personal trips to business development. Jessica's marketing budget had mysterious consulting fees that corresponded to spa weekends and restaurant charges in cities where we had no clients. They were funding their affair with company money and documenting it in corporate systems they thought I was too busy to monitor. Rule 1 of revenge. When they go low, you go subterranean. But I needed more than financial irregularities. I needed to understand the full scope of their plan, and that meant understanding all the players. Which brought me to Amanda. Amanda Matthews was a pediatric nurse at UCSF, Ryan's wife of 8 years, and one of the most genuinely kind people I'd ever met. She volunteered at children's hospitals, organized charity drives, and somehow managed to make Ryan seem like a better person just by association. If anyone deserved to know what her husband was really doing, it was Amanda. But approaching her required delicacy. I couldn't just call and say, "Hey Amanda, your husband is cheating on you with my wife, and they're planning to steal my company." That was the kind of conversation that required preparation. I spent the next week building my case file. Every email, every expense report, every text message I could legally access. I created a timeline that showed the progression of their affair alongside their business machinations. I documented the IP theft, the financial irregularities, and the systematic campaign to minimize my role in the company I'd helped build. Then I called Amanda. "David, what a nice surprise. Ryan mentioned you've been working crazy hours on the IPO preparation." "That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about," I said. "I'm concerned about Ryan. He seems stressed, and I thought maybe you'd notice something too." A pause. In that pause, I heard volumes. "He has been different lately," Amanda admitted. "More secretive about work, and he's been traveling more, but the trips seem, I don't know, vague. He used to tell me everything about his meetings, but now he just says they're investor relations and changes the subject." "When was the last time he took you on one of his business trips?" "He doesn't anymore. He says it's not professional now that we're close to going public. But David, he used to love having me meet potential clients. He said I was his secret weapon for making people trust him." Amanda was smart. She was connecting dots I hadn't even drawn for her yet. "Would you be willing to meet for coffee?" I asked. "There are some things I think we should discuss in person." We met at a small cafe in the Mission, far from both our usual circles. Amanda looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with her hospital shifts. She'd lost weight, and her usual cheerful energy seemed forced. "Ryan's having an affair," she said, before I could even order coffee. "I've known for months, but I kept hoping I was wrong." "I'm sorry, Amanda, you deserve so much better than this. Do you know who she is?" I pulled out my tablet and showed her the evidence. Not everything. I wasn't cruel enough to share every intimate detail. But enough. Enough to show her that her husband and my wife had been planning a future that didn't include either of us. Amanda didn't cry. She got angry, which was so much better for my purposes. They used company money for their trips? Every weekend getaway, every romantic dinner, every hotel room. Ryan's been billing it as business development, and Jessica's been approving it through marketing partnerships. That's embezzlement. That's just the beginning. I showed her the emails about pushing me out post-IPO, about stealing my intellectual property, about repositioning themselves as the real innovators behind NexGen's success. Amanda studied the documents with the same careful attention she probably used reading medical charts. "They're not just cheating on us," she said finally. "They're planning to destroy your career and steal your life's work." "That's about the size of it. What are you going to do?" "That depends. Are you interested in helping me stop them?" Amanda looked up from the tablet, and for the first time since I'd known her, she smiled in a way that wasn't entirely nice. "What did you have in mind?" Over the next hour, we formed an alliance. Amanda had access to Ryan's personal accounts, his credit card statements, his phone records, all the digital breadcrumbs of an affair conducted by someone who thought he was too smart to get caught. I had access to corporate systems and the technical expertise to document everything legally and thoroughly. But more importantly, we both had something Jessica and Ryan had underestimated: patience. They were rushing toward their IPO revelation, planning their grand moment where they'd announce their relationship and my departure simultaneously. They wanted drama, spectacle, the kind of public validation that would cement their roles as the new power couple of Silicon Valley. We were going to give them exactly what they wanted, just not the way they'd planned. "There's one more thing," Amanda said as we prepared to leave. "Ryan thinks I don't know about his affairs. Plural." "Plural? This isn't his first time. There was someone 3 years ago, someone from his old company, and I think there might be someone else now, someone besides Jessica." The afternoon suddenly got much more interesting. "Tell me everything," I said. They wanted a grand announcement? I'd give them a grand finale they'd never forget. Sometimes the best theater happens when the audience doesn't know they're watching a show. Amanda's revelation changed everything. This wasn't just about Jessica and Ryan having an affair. It was about Ryan being a serial manipulator who collected women like trophies and discarded them when they stopped serving his purposes, which meant Jessica wasn't his endgame. She was just his current convenience. Over the next 2 weeks, Amanda and I worked together with the efficiency of a military operation. She had access to Ryan's personal life. I had access to his professional one. Between us, we built a complete picture of a man who'd turned deception into an art form. The evidence was staggering. Ryan had been running expense scams for years, not just for affairs, but for personal luxuries he passed off as business expenses. His client dinners were often meals with women who weren't clients at all. His industry conferences were weekend getaways with whoever he was dating at the time. But the real breakthrough came when Amanda found Ryan's backup phone. "He thought he was so clever," she told me during one of our weekly coffee meetings, hiding it in his gym bag, using it for his private conversations. He didn't know I found it months ago. The backup phone contained conversations with 3 different women, including Jessica. But the most interesting conversations were with someone named Stephanie Torres, a marketing executive at one of our competitor companies. Ryan to Stephanie: "Jessica's useful for now, but she's getting too attached. Talking about leaving her husband after the IPO, making long-term plans. You know how I feel about long-term plans." Stephanie to Ryan: "What about the business side? Is she really as connected as you claimed?" Ryan to Stephanie: "She's connected enough, and she's giving me access to Chen's technical work. The AI algorithms are worth millions, but Chen's too naive to protect them properly." Stephanie to Ryan: "When do you plan to make your move?" Ryan to Stephanie: "After the IPO. Once Jessica's served her purpose, I'll transition to NexGen's competitor relationships, maybe even bring some of Chen's innovations with me." I read that exchange 3 times before the full implications sank in. Ryan wasn't just planning to push me out of my own company. He was planning to take my work to our competitors. He was using Jessica to gain access to my technical innovations, then planning to dump her once he'd extracted everything valuable. Jessica had no idea she was being played just as badly as I was. "He's been setting up a move to Stephanie's company for months," Amanda explained. "The texts go back to before his affair with Jessica even started. She works for TechFlow Industries." TechFlow was our biggest competitor, the company we'd been racing to beat to market with our AI platform. If Ryan took my innovations there, he wouldn't just be stealing my work, he'd be destroying NexGen entirely. "Amanda," I said, "how do you feel about accelerating our timeline?" The IPO launch party was scheduled for Friday night at the Moscone Center. 500 industry leaders, investors, and media representatives would be there to celebrate NexGen's public offering. Jessica and Ryan had been planning to use the event to announce their relationship and my transition to an advisory role simultaneously, presenting it as a natural evolution for a maturing company. Instead, they were going to get a masterclass in what happens when you underestimate the person who built the systems you depend on. I spent the next week preparing. Every piece of evidence Amanda and I had gathered was organized, verified, and loaded into automated systems I'd built specifically for this purpose. Email campaigns, social media posts, press releases, and direct communications to every investor and board member, all scheduled to deploy in carefully timed waves. But timing wasn't enough. I needed to ensure maximum impact, which meant making sure Jessica and Ryan were committed to their performance before I pulled the trigger. That's when I implemented what Amanda and I started calling the girlfriend twist. I sent Jessica a message from Ryan's backup phone, the one he used for his private conversations. The message was simple. Can't wait to introduce you to everyone Friday night. Time to make it official. Love you, babe. Jessica replied within minutes, I love you too. I can't believe we're finally going to be free to be together publicly. David's going to be devastated, but he'll understand eventually. This is about our future. Then I sent Amanda screenshots of Jessica's response, along with some of Ryan's more brutal assessments of their relationship from his conversations with Stephanie. Amanda forwarded those screenshots to Jessica with a simple message: we need to talk. By Wednesday, Jessica was in panic mode. She'd been confronted with evidence that Ryan was playing her, but she didn't know how much Amanda knew or how much I knew. She started sending desperate messages to Ryan, who was avoiding her calls because he was trying to figure out how his wife had gotten access to his private communications. The beautiful part was watching them turn on each other. Jessica demanded explanations Ryan couldn't give without revealing his broader deception. Ryan accused Jessica of being careless with security, which led her to point out that he was the one with a secret phone. They were so busy managing their crisis that they stopped paying attention to anything else, including me. Thursday afternoon, I called a mandatory company meeting. Everyone on staff, all department heads, plus several key investors who'd requested updates on IPO preparations. I'd positioned it as a final technical review before the public launch, but I had something else in mind. Before we go public, I told the assembled group, I want to make sure everyone understands exactly what we're bringing to market and who's responsible for what innovations. I pulled up a presentation I'd prepared, the complete history of NexGen's technical development. Every algorithm, every breakthrough, every innovation that had made our company valuable, with detailed documentation of who had developed what and when. The adaptive learning protocols that were the cornerstone of our AI. My work, developed over 18 months, with commit logs and development records showing individual contributions. The predictive analytics that had investors excited. Mine, with mathematical proofs and testing data that clearly demonstrated individual authorship. The user interface design that made complex AI accessible to general users. Also mine, with design documents and user testing results spanning 2 years. Ryan and Jessica sat in the back of the conference room, growing paler with each slide. I want to make sure, I continued, that our public communications accurately reflect these contributions. Intellectual property attribution is crucial for a public company, both for legal compliance and investor confidence. One of the investors, Mitchell Harrison from Summit Ventures, raised his hand. David, this is incredibly impressive individual work. How much of NexGen's core value proposition comes from your personal innovations? About 85% of our technical differentiation, I said. The rest is excellent work by our broader development team. I didn't look at Ryan or Jessica when I said it, but I could feel them radiating panic from across the room. After the meeting, Jessica cornered me in the hallway. What the hell was that about? She demanded. Just making sure everyone understands what we've built here. Why? You made it sound like you did everything yourself. I presented the facts. If the facts make it sound like I did most of the technical work, maybe that's because I did most of the technical work. Jessica stared at me for a long moment. David, is everything okay between us? You've been different lately. Different how? I don't know. More confident, I guess. More present. Maybe I'm just excited about the IPO. This company means everything to me, Jess. I want to make sure it gets the recognition it deserves. She nodded, but she looked troubled as she walked away. That night, I went home and made final preparations. Every automated system was tested and ready. Every piece of evidence was verified and loaded. Every communication was scheduled and targeted. At 9 a.m. Friday morning, exactly 12 hours before the IPO launch party, the first wave would deploy. By the time Jessica and Ryan realized what was happening, it would be far too late to stop it. I set my alarm for 6 a.m., just to make sure I was awake to watch the show. Sometimes the best revenge is simply telling the truth at the worst possible moment. Watching a house of cards collapse is beautiful. Watching it collapse during a live-streamed investor meeting? That's poetry. Friday morning arrived with the kind of crisp San Francisco clarity that makes everything seem possible. I woke up before my alarm, made coffee, and sat down at my computer to watch my automated systems come to life. At exactly 9 a.m., the first wave deployed. Every major investor in NexGen Solutions received an email with the subject line, "Financial irregularities requiring immediate review." The emails contained detailed documentation of Ryan's expense account manipulation, complete with receipts, credit card statements, and location data that proved he'd been using company funds for personal activities. At 9:15 a.m., the second wave hit. Tech reporters at 5 major industry publications received anonymous tips about IP theft at a soon-to-be public AI company, complete with code repositories, development timelines, and communication records showing attempts to misattribute individual innovations as collaborative work. At 9:30 a.m., the third wave launched across social media. Industry gossip accounts started receiving screenshots of Jessica and Ryan's private communications, carefully edited to remove anything genuinely intimate but preserve all the professional manipulation and personal betrayal. Within minutes, the NexGen scandal was trending among Silicon Valley insiders. My phone started ringing at 9:35 a.m. "David, it's Mitchell Harrison. We need to talk immediately." "Good morning, Mitchell. What can I do for you?" "Have you seen the reports about financial irregularities at your company?" "What reports?" I let him explain what I'd already orchestrated, feigning surprise and concern at appropriate moments. By the end of the call, Mitchell was convinced that I was as shocked as he was, and that Ryan had been operating without my knowledge or approval. "This is obviously very concerning with the IPO scheduled for today," Mitchell said. "We're going to need a complete audit before we can proceed." "Of course, I'll provide whatever access you need to our systems." "David, I have to ask, do you think there might be other irregularities we should know about?" "I honestly don't know, Mitchell, but if there are, we'll find them and address them immediately. The integrity of NexGen is more important than any individual." While I was taking calls from investors, Jessica was dealing with her own crisis. Someone had sent screenshots of her private messages to several industry gossip blogs, and her phone was buzzing with calls from reporters asking about her relationship with our head of business development. Ryan, meanwhile, was trying to manage a full-scale financial audit while simultaneously fielding questions about why he'd been billing romantic dinners as client meetings. At 11 a.m., Amanda sent me a text. "Ryan just called. He's coming home to explain everything. Should be interesting." At 11:30 a.m., Jessica stormed into my office. "Someone's trying to destroy us," she said without preamble. "Someone with access to our private communications and company systems." "That's a serious accusation. Do you have any idea who it might be?" "It has to be someone with administrative access, someone who could get into email systems and expense reports." I nodded thoughtfully. "That's a pretty short list. Maybe we should involve law enforcement." "David, there's something I need to tell you." Here it comes, I thought, finally. "Ryan and I have been involved, romantically, for a few months." "Involved how?" "We've been having an affair." I stared at her for a long moment, letting the silence stretch. "How long is a few months, Jessica?" "Since March." "It's October, Jess. That's not a few months. That's 7 months." "I know how long it's been. The point is, someone is using our relationship to attack the company right before the IPO. So you think someone is sabotaging NexGen because you and Ryan are sleeping together?" "I think someone found out about us and decided to weaponize it." I leaned back in my chair. "Jessica, do you think it's possible that your affair isn't the real issue here?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, maybe someone's concerned about financial irregularities and IP misattribution, and your affair is just collateral damage." Her face went white. "What do you know about IP misattribution?" "I know that several investors have been led to believe that my individual technical contributions were collaborative team efforts." I know that presentations have been structured to minimize my role in developing our core innovations, and I know that someone's been positioning themselves to take credit for work they didn't do. David, I also know that our head of business development has been billing personal expenses as company costs for years, not just recently. So, when you ask me if someone's trying to destroy us, I have to wonder if you mean the company or your personal relationship. Jessica sat down heavily in the chair across from my desk. How long have you known? About the affair? Long enough. About the business manipulation? Long enough to document everything thoroughly. Are you behind this? Behind what? The financial audit that's revealing systematic expense fraud? The IP review that's showing accurate attribution for technical innovations? The media attention that's exposing the difference between individual contributions and collaborative claims? You know what I mean? Jess, I'm not behind anything. I'm just the guy who built the technology that made this company valuable, and I want to make sure that's clearly understood before we go public. She stared at me for a full minute. You're not going to fight for us? For our marriage? What marriage? You've been planning a future with Ryan for months. You've been using company resources to fund your affair. You've been repositioning my work as your collaborative achievement. What exactly am I supposed to fight for? I made mistakes, but we can fix this. Can we fix the part where you and Ryan were planning to push me into an advisory role after the IPO? Can we fix the part where you've been systematically undermining my contributions to position yourselves as the real innovators? Can we fix the part where this was never about love and always about control? Jessica's phone buzzed with another call. She ignored it. David, please. The IPO launch is tonight. Whatever you're planning, can we talk about it after? Can we get through tonight and then figure out how to move forward? I'm not planning anything, Jessica. Tonight's event will proceed exactly as scheduled. You and Ryan can make whatever announcements you were planning to make. I'll be there to support the company I built. She looked confused by my calm response, like she'd been expecting more drama. You'll be there? Of course I'll be there. It's my company's IPO launch. Where else would I be? After Jessica left, I checked the status of my automated systems. Everything was proceeding perfectly. The fourth wave was scheduled to deploy at 6 p.m., right as the evening's festivities began. The fifth wave would hit at 8 p.m. during the main presentation. The sixth and final wave would deploy at 9 p.m. as Jessica and Ryan made their planned announcement. At 2 p.m., Amanda sent me another update. Ryan's completely panicked. He's been on the phone with lawyers all day. Also, I found something interesting in his email. You need to see this. She forwarded me an email chain between Ryan and Stephanie Torres at TechFlow Industries. The emails were from this week, after the first wave of revelations, but before Ryan realized the full scope of what was happening. Ryan to Stephanie. The situation here is getting complicated. Someone's leaked information about financial irregularities. I might need to accelerate our timeline. Stephanie to Ryan. How much of Chen's work can you bring with you? Ryan to Stephanie. All of it. I've been documenting everything as collaborative development. Even if Chen objects, it'll be his word against mine and Jessica's. Stephanie to Ryan. And Jessica? Ryan to Stephanie. Jessica's a problem I can solve later. Right now, I need her backing about the collaborative development claims. Once that's established, she becomes expendable. I forwarded that email chain to my automated systems with a simple note. Deploy with Wave 6. At 4 p.m., I went home to shower and change for the party. I put on my best suit, the one I'd bought for my wedding but rarely had occasion to wear, and looked at myself in the mirror. Time to go to work, I said to my reflection. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. They never mentioned it tastes even better when served publicly, professionally, and with a side of complete social annihilation. The IPO launch party was held at the Moscone Center, transformed into a showcase for Silicon Valley success. 500 guests, live streaming to industry media, and a program that would determine the future of NexGen solutions. I arrived at 6 p.m. as the fourth wave deployed across every major tech blog. Technical documentation showing exactly who had contributed what to NexGen's innovations, with timestamps and mathematical proofs that made individual authorship impossible to dispute. Jessica and Ryan were near the entrance, greeting investors while dealing with a crisis they didn't fully understand yet. They saw me arrive and approached immediately. "David," Ryan said, "we need to talk privately before the presentation." "About how we're going to handle the media questions tonight with facts," I replied. "What's your approach?" Jessica stepped closer. "David, please. I know you're angry, but can we present a united front tonight? For the company?" "Jessica, we will absolutely present a united front. We're going to stand together and tell everyone exactly what NexGen Solutions represents and who built it. I wouldn't miss it for the world." At 8 p.m., the main presentation began. Jessica and Ryan took the stage to applause, launching into their prepared remarks about NexGen's journey from startup to public company. That's when the fifth wave deployed. Every screen in the building suddenly showed a split-screen comparison. On one side, technical innovations with clear individual attribution. On the other side, marketing presentations that had repositioned those same innovations as collaborative efforts. The audience watched in real time as the difference between reality and public relations became impossible to ignore. Jessica tried to continue her presentation, but murmurs from the audience grew louder. Ryan stepped to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, we seem to be experiencing some technical difficulties." That's when he saw me at the back of the room holding a tablet, smiling. Our eyes met across 500 people, and Ryan realized exactly who had built the technical systems he was now trapped inside. "David Chen, ladies and gentlemen," I called out, "architect of NexGen's technical innovations and the systems we're all using tonight." The applause was different now. Recognition, appreciation, and growing understanding. At exactly 9 p.m., the sixth and final wave hit. Every phone buzzed simultaneously as industry insiders received the Ryan Matthews files. His backup phone conversations with Stephanie Torres, showing his systematic manipulation of multiple relationships and his plans to steal my work for competitors. The room fell silent as 500 tech leaders read the same revelations. Then conversation built like an approaching storm. Ryan saw me and shoved his way forward. "You think you're clever, don't you?" I stepped toward the emergency exit, leading him away from investors. "Ryan, I think you're having some technical difficulties with your presentation. You destroyed everything. Years of work, years of relationship building." "I documented everything. There's a difference." Ryan swung at me. I dodged. He stumbled into a catering table, sending champagne glasses cascading to the floor. "You ruined my life!" he screamed. "No, Ryan. I just showed everyone what your life actually was." Jessica appeared, her makeup smeared, holding her phone like a live grenade. "David, we need to talk." "I'm listening." "How long have you been planning this?" "I haven't been planning anything. I've been responding to discovering that my wife and best friend were systematically destroying my career while conducting an affair with company resources." Jessica looked at Ryan on the floor. "Is that true? About Stephanie Torres and TechFlow?" Ryan's silence was confirmation enough. "You were planning to leave me too," Jessica continued. "After using me to destroy David, you were going to take everything to our competitors." Mitchell Harrison pushed through the crowd. "David, we need to discuss the company's future immediately." "Of course, Monday morning?" "This weekend. There will be significant changes to NexGen's leadership structure before any public offering can proceed." Jessica laughed bitterly. "Changes to leadership structure, that's one way to put it." "Jessica," Mitchell said, "the board will be conducting a complete review of all marketing activities and investor communications. We need to ensure our public statements have been accurate." "And Ryan," he continued, "your employment is terminated effective immediately. Security will escort you from the building." "You can't fire me!" Ryan protested from the floor. "I have contracts, I have equity." "You had equity? Corporate malfeasance voids your vesting schedule. I suggest you contact a lawyer." Ryan struggled to his feet, glass crunching under his shoes. "This is all your fault," he said, pointing at me. "You couldn't just accept that you're not leadership material?" "Ryan," I said calmly, "I didn't destroy anything. I just stopped letting you steal it." Security escorted him toward the exit. As he reached the door, he turned back one last time. "You think you won, but you destroyed your own company. No investor will touch NexGen after tonight. Actually, Mitchell said, David's individual technical contributions are exactly what we're interested in. The company will survive just fine without its compromised business development department. As Ryan disappeared, attention turned to Jessica. She was staring at her phone, which buzzed with constant notifications. Jessica, I said gently, what are you reading? Every major tech blog is running the story. They're calling it the biggest Silicon Valley scandal since Theranos. I'm sorry it had to happen this way. She looked up at me. Are you? Sorry, I thought about it honestly. I'm sorry you made choices that led to this. I'm sorry Ryan manipulated both of us. But am I sorry that the truth came out? No. Jessica nodded slowly. The worst part is that you're right. About all of it. Ryan was using me. I was using you, and none of us were honest about what we really wanted. What did you really want, Jess? I wanted to matter. I wanted to be more than just the marketing person who explained someone else's genius. You could have done that. You could have built your own company, developed your own innovations. Instead, I tried to steal yours. The crowd was dispersing, industry insiders already crafting their versions of the evening's events. Mitchell approached us one final time. David, the board wants to schedule an emergency meeting for Sunday morning. We need to discuss NexGen's future under your leadership. My leadership? You built the technology that makes this company valuable. You've demonstrated integrity under extreme circumstances. And you're apparently the only person here who understands how our systems work. He glanced around at technical staff still trying to regain control of the displays. How do we turn off your demonstration? I pulled out my tablet and entered a shutdown command. The screens returned to the standard NexGen logo. Magic, I said. After Mitchell left, Jessica and I stood alone in the slowly emptying hall, surrounded by champagne glass debris and the ruins of carefully planned presentations. What happens now? She asked. Now you figure out what you actually want to build, instead of what you want to take. Now I run the company I created. Now we both learn to live with the consequences of our choices. And us? There is no us, Jessica. There hasn't been for months. Tonight just made it official. She nodded, accepting what we both already knew. For what it's worth, I never meant for it to go this far. I know, but it did. Jessica gathered her purse and coat, then paused. You really did build something amazing. I'm sorry I tried to take credit for your work. Thank you for saying that. After she left, I stood alone in the exhibition hall, looking at the NexGen banner where our IPO launch had turned into a public execution. My phone buzzed with messages from investors, reporters, and employees, but I ignored them all. As I walked out into the cool San Francisco night, I realized this hadn't really been about revenge. It had been about refusing to let other people define my value, steal my work, or control my future. Jessica and Ryan had assumed I was predictable, reliable, safe. They were right about one thing. I was predictable. I predictably refused to let people underestimate me. I predictably protected what I'd built. And I predictably made sure that credit went where credit was due. The company I'd built would survive. The innovations I'd developed would change how humans interacted with artificial intelligence. And the people who'd tried to steal both would spend the rest of their careers explaining why their next employers should trust them. I drove home to start building the future I actually wanted.